Hello, welcome to the Crossroads Inn, episode 8. Today we will be doing our entire season recap for the Crossroads Inn, or for Game of Thrones season 7. In this, we're going to be talking about all the plot lines. If you tuned in last week, you'll kind of realize we talked a lot about, we'll talk about the next week when we do the season wrap up. So before we start, as always, I just want to give a quick plug to our other shows. Check out our Avatar: The Last Airbender podcast, Thoughts from Aunt Wu. We will be back this week with the desert. I know I kind of keep saying that, but I promise this time we will be back on that and getting back into that once a week. So once the Crossroads Inn is over, we will have that to fall back on. If you're interested in Avatar, this is a show where we break down Avatar: The Last Airbender episodes and with full knowledge of the future. So similar to what we do here, but with the added benefit of the series is over, so we know everything that's happening. Also, I announced last week we're going to be doing some fun CW content. I also plan on doing a kind of where are we in the Arrowverse podcast. Cory will take care of that pretty soon. And kind of go over everything regarding the 4 shows and where all of them are. So if you're interested in the Arrowverse, check that out. And also, I just came up with a really interesting idea for a Hearthstone show, so if you're like our Hearthstone content, we should have some more stuff coming down the pipe. However, without further ado, let's get into this podcast. Today, I have my usual panel. Hello, Cory.
Hello.
And Chris.
What's up?
So the way we're going to break down our season recap is kind of similar to how we do episode recaps, with a initial thoughts, a discussion where we go kind of family to family or location to location, and then kind of a final thoughts and ratings. However, obviously we're talking about a lot more stuff, so it's going to be kind of more quick hits on things and kind of putting everything into context as best we can. This is a season that had a lot of movement between places. Characters really didn't spend, like in previous seasons, we've had a lot of characters spending an entire season in one place. So some of the discussions are going to kind of bleed into each other because, you kind of can't talk about all of Winterfell without Jon's story not being in Winterfell for, after the first 2 episodes. So there's going to be kind of a lot of overlap. So we'll do our best to kind of keep this cohesive and keep this from being, rehashing the same things over and over again. However, without further ado, let's get into our initial thoughts. Cory, why don't you give us your initial thoughts? Season 7 of Game of Thrones, where do you think we are as a series?
There's no secret, if you listen to my stuff since the beginning, that I absolutely love this season. I've said it before, I could say it again, and I could say it again, that I think this is a necessary direction the show needed to take. This is stuff that's been teased since episode 1, that we are going to be getting a giant zombie war with all the magic, with all the pageantry, with everything that we're seeing currently. Dragons burning zombies. This is all stuff that that people have been waiting for since season 1, and now we're getting it in stride. I don't mind, just for story purpose telling, that travel time is non-existent anymore. Now they transition now into a fantasy show. What it was earlier, before it was a fantasy show, was like politics and like a fantasy setting. They went very light on the fantasy, but now we've taken the complete opposite paradigm shift, and we're on the other side of the coin. And the coin, I think, is this exact same thing. I don't think the writing has suffered much. I think all of the characters' motivations make sense, and I think we've made it to a point too where we just can't kill off characters anymore. We have reached that block where all of the characters that are still alive need to stay alive in order for you to tell the remaining of the story. And maybe the next part of this season, or next season, whatever you want to call it, will be different, where they actually start narrowing it down to what they finally want the show to wrap up into. But at the moment, I'm enjoying the ride where we are right now, and I think this season is one of the strongest seasons we have seen, period.
All right, Chris, how about you?
So I was trying to think about the season as a whole, but I was thinking of it as sort of like plot points. And I realized plot points, cool, it did all the stuff, it hit all the beats we needed. But then I started to realize that, again, what I've been complaining about the entire time is just this weird pacing of the entire thing. It's completely different than what it used to be, which I think is just, I don't want the show to change because, okay, the show's over, but get rid of it. Like, let's hurry to the end and get on to our next project. Like, if they're gonna change the pacing of the show, I'd rather they do it for a purpose. And I don't think they've actually done it. I think it really is the pacing of the show has changed because they're like, we made our money, and the showrunners are like, let's get the fuck out of here. We don't need to like continue this on, and George R. R. Martin hasn't given us anything, so we don't have any more source material. We don't have enough source material to like just strain out another 20 episodes. So let's get out. The whole like changing to more of a fantasy zombie killing thing is fine. It's just it would be cooler if they did that while continuing to have the same pacing they used to. And I just don't think they have that now. And I'm starting to think of like I find myself the entire season trying to make excuses for the stupid shit that I'm seeing, and I don't want to do that anymore. Like I keep making excuses, thinking like, oh, he's alive because he's probably gonna do something important in the books. But like if I'm just looking at the season on itself without the context of the whole show and the whole without the context of the books that haven't been released yet, it just doesn't hold up, and it bothers me. That's all.
Yeah. Cory, I honestly don't think I could disagree with you more. I think that this was an absolute disaster of a season. There were some cool things. There were some good things. There were 2 episodes that I think were pretty good. But for the most part, I think this season was just an out-and-out mess. For one thing, if you really look at it, nothing really happened. Like, that sounds weird because the pacing was really fast and they were like, let's do this, let's do this, let's do this. But if you think about where we were at the start of season 7 and where we are now, what's actually changed? Like, nothing. It's exactly the same. Everyone is basically in exactly the same position, or their positions have changed kind of in name only. And that's really weird, and that, I think, gets to the heart of why I think the pacing is such a problem. Because it's one thing if you want to sort of speed towards the end, like, okay, we're getting to the end, let's wrap up, let's get this thing towards where we want to go. But it's another thing when it feels like they're doing it almost like, I guess as Chris said, like without a purpose. Like I don't see what they're doing. I don't see what they're accomplishing. And it's not like this season was without moments where I was like, wow, what was the point of that? I mean, I was kind of going back through and looking at plot points today and kind of thinking through how I feel about this. I'm like, wait a minute, that seems completely meaningless. Wait, that seems completely meaningless. There's all these things that were totally meaningless and completely, why did they have to be there? And if you want to completely speed up the pacing, if you want to go really, really fast, you can't then include a 10-minute sex scene between Miss Sandy and Grey Worm. You can't then include a completely
It wasn't 10
meaningless
minutes.
plot.
I don't think.
Whatever, however long it was. You can't include a completely meaningless plot about Jorah's grayscale that had no impact on the story. You really even shouldn't have had Old Town to begin with. Like, there's so many things this season I'm like, wow, you could have just cut that out and actually left time to make the plot points that were impactful better. And I just think it was such a weird relationship and such a weird movement in terms of time. Cory said the story kind of moved more towards being a fantasy story, and I think that he's right, but I also think that that's a serious problem. Because while fantasy stories are really good, and there have been some really great ones, the idea of taking a show and a story that is built to be the convention breaker, the story where George R. R. Martin has said, this story is meant to break the traditional fantasy conventions. You can't then turn around and turn it into a traditional fantasy story because then it doesn't fit. This season does not fit with the previous seasons. I will let you respond to that, Cory, if you'd like.
Actually, before we do that, the interesting part when you said like they could have taken out useless storylines and like improved other ones, they've actually done that before. They took out Bran for like 3 seasons or 2 seasons. They let him go through puberty, and we just didn't know who he was, and they like expanded on the other stories. They didn't do it this time. They just said, okay, Jorah's gonna come back, but we gotta watch him go through coming back the entirety of everything he does. Like, we need Samuel to go down to the Citadel and come back. We have to watch all of it though. Like,
that's what I mean. Like there were things that this season felt incredibly fast paced, and at the same time it also felt like, wait, why are we moving so slowly? What's going on here?
I do actually disagree with the one thing when you said nothing happened. I do think things happened. If you go from the beginning to now, I think there actually stuff happened. Wall went down, like fucking dragon got taken down, Danny John stuff, all that stuff. Yeah, like all that.
We'll talk about it.
Sure, yeah. Like things happen, I think. I just think they happen at weird rates.
All right, Cory, do you have anything you want to say?
I just think we're in a place right now where maybe I'm saying we, because I don't agree with you guys, but I'm saying like other people that feel the way you guys feel are like kind of upset with the show because they now have limited time to do everything they want to do. And I actually agree. They don't have a template to work for anymore. George R. R. Martin isn't caught up on the book, so now the show's ahead. And now they were also given a limited amount of time. You guys have whatever it is, 14 episodes to finish your story. And they don't have the catalyst anymore. So I guess people that are book purists and, really hate the stuff George R. R. Martin does to heart can feel that like the show has lost its direction completely. But like I am more in a place right now where I'm looking at this and I am looking at what has always been there, the elements of the show that have always existed. And now they're starting to really commit to the other stuff. And do I agree that the Jorah stuff didn't need to really be front and center? Sure. We don't know where that's going to end up. Maybe the cure ends up taking a role in the next season one way or another. Maybe not. We don't know that. But we have to, I think, the next, almost like it is, if I'm going to use a completely different analogy, like the way my feelings or other people's feelings towards this new Star Wars movie is, how it's dependent on the rest that's going to come. I think Game of Thrones is really dependent right now on everything else that's going to come in the next 7 to 8 episodes to see what was really, as Mark thinks, is like a waste of time versus what actually is going to end up wrapping up the show. And I think I'm just going to be hopeful, and I think we're going to end up being satisfied.
But we keep saying
Like, you think this is a setup season rather than an actual season? Sort of?
I just feel like we keep saying
Yes, well,
keep
I
being
actually,
like,
I'm 100% sure that's what it is, actually, to answer your question.
Like it's like a Feast for Crows compared to Dance of Dragons.
Yes,
Or-
I absolutely, because like, look at everything.
Oh, actually, no, not wrong one.
yeah,
Oh, I
because
absolutely
things,
believe that
things
too.
happen like a lot.
I think it was a Clash of Kings setting up a Song of Storm. Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah. The problem I have with that is twofold. One, we only have 7 episodes left, and you say before like, oh well, you need to streamline the story. I mean, the amount of time that they've spent on setting certain things up, like this was supposed to be the sort of like, okay, Dany's landed in Westeros, let's go. Like that's what this was billed as, and I mean, I don't think you're entirely wrong. That's like, yeah, like what's going to happen in the next season is going to affect how we feel about this. But I feel like I keep saying that. I feel like throughout this entire season, I kept being like, well, I didn't really like that, but maybe if it goes somewhere good, it'll be good. And it's like, well, you can't keep saying that. Eventually, it has to just exist on its own. It has to be good
But I
on
don't,
its own.
on its own, I just don't think it's bad. And again, it's an opinion. I'm not stating that as a fact. But what I'm trying to like convey to you is look at where everything ended. You got the walkers through the wall.
Well, let's hold on before we do that. Let's do that. Let's talk about where things have ended and be specific because I want to keep this like never just stuff. So let's get into our episode discussion just because I think it'll be an easier way to frame all this.
Before we start, can I say one thing?
Go ahead.
Mark, you cannot spell any of the characters in this show.
I know.
Spelled Cersei wrong, Jaime wrong, Winterfell wrong.
Spelled everything wrong. You should see my avatar outlines. Like I spelled everything.
I'm looking at this like, damn.
I spelled
Okay.
everything wrong.
You spelled Varys wrong. You spelled Varys like the way the League of Legends character is spelled.
I just type and see what happens. I don't.
Okay.
This is
All
not
right.
meant
All
for
right.
anyone to read, but you guys. So starting in
I got League
Winterfell,
flashbacks.
whatever we want to call Winterfell, because I can't spell it. So overall, I didn't have most because I was just doing all that stuff, but I was really disappointed with the way everything that happened to Winterfell. I think there are just some serious problems that we'll get into. But the first question I want to ask is Jon's resurrection and death that happened at the end of season 5 and then resurrection in season 6. Was that worth it? Should that have happened specifically in the show? Forgetting that it's important context in the books. Like,
I think it had to, because he was bound by his oath, and he wasn't gonna break the oath until he died. Till death does his watch end or whatever the fuck.
But
Right.
I just feel like what was the point? Like I feel like they could have achieved basically the same thing if he just hadn't died, if he had been stabbed and lived.
But him dying is the whole point of like he made the ultimate sacrifice for the cause he believed in of defending the realm.
I guess. I'm just like, I'm kind of at this point, like, I feel like that should matter a lot more than it does at this
Yeah,
point.
like nobody realizes he's dead or an
Yeah,
undead
like, no one
god.
seems to care. He doesn't
That's a
even
little weird.
seem to care.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe he's maybe like in the books, like in the story of the books, he looks a little more undead, but they don't make him look that undead because he's
They
Kit
can't, because
Harington.
it's Kit
I don't
Harington,
know.
and everyone needs, hot boat sex.
It's not just incest. It's zombie undead incest.
Well, the Targaryens know how to do it.
They fuck dead things. I don't remember.
I just mean they do
I missed
incest
most of
better
this
than
that
anybody
got-
else. All right, so getting past that, so we have the whole plot line with Littlefinger, Arya, and Sansa, and I think that first and foremost, and I'm gonna ask this about a whole bunch of characters, but like, what the fuck happened to Littlefinger? What did they like? What happened?
Nothing. Again, the Littlefinger from start to finish. Like I was a little shaky at first, and I was making jokes with about it with you guys. Like he just stands there and smiles and looks like an idiot. But like this was by far and away the show's way of being like, all right, he's gonna have one last hurrah before we kill him off, and that's what it was. No more, no less.
Yeah, that doesn't. This was like one of the most influential, powerful players who was able to like manipulate so much to start the War of the Five Kings.
I
And
think the point. We continue
yeah,
first.
sorry, and I'm fine with the idea of like he was brought down by Sansa, and like his love for Sansa essentially blinded him and like kept him from seeing the whole board. But just even before that, like what I just don't understand what they did with his character, even going back to season 6, because for all of the his love for Sansa, he still married Sansa off to the Boltons. Like he was still willing to basically betray her back in last season. So I'm just not fully understanding what they were doing. Like I feel like they ran out of stuff with Littlefinger, and they're like, well, guess he's gonna die now. Like I just everything about this like really cool, interesting character who had all of this power and scheming, and then like I don't know what they did with him.
And here's my take on Littlefinger. Okay, so this season again was a transition point from the game of men to the game of like gods or dragons and shit. Littlefinger excelled in the game of men, and the fact that he couldn't do anything because magic is here, brands of fucking he's got the cheat codes. Arya's a killer assassin. It means that his time in this world is like done. It's like, all right, it's over now, and that's why he went down. I'm not 100% sure if the way he went down is the way I would have done it, but I think that's why he went down and how he went down that way, right? And also, because he wanted Sansa, and that was like his weakness, and his weakness combined with her family of the X-Men of magic.
I mean, I think that's a fair. I guess that's fair, but
Time of Men ended.
it just that saying that like okay, the time of men ended is fine, but then you go south and you have Cersei and stuff, and it's like, well, she's just playing the same game. I mean, unless
she's not in the
whoever
north.
he's in the north, and that's it. But
It's more apparent for them, I guess, that it's an issue.
I don't know. I feel like this character, like, it's used to have be so much more than what he ended up in the end, and even his like scheme of like turning her against Arya almost seemed like, for all of its like, it wasn't even that dastardly. Like he was basically just being like, Arya, like Sansa, you should watch your back, and like Arya might want to kill you, and
No,
Arya
he
might
was-
have wanted
he-
to kill her.
I disagree. He was sowing the seeds of completely trying to separate. With Arya sending away Brienne. Listen, if Arya
didn't
was,
send away Brienne, Sansa did.
what did I say?
Arya.
I'm sorry, I meant Sansa. What he was trying to do was make it so she had no one that she can trust except for him.
Wait,
And
what?
then what?
I thought Littlefinger was the reason she sent away Brienne.
No, I'm saying to you, she was sent away. Brienne of Tarth, her one ally. He sees this. he wants to completely make it so she feels completely isolated and afraid, and the one person that she can depend on is him. And that was his play, to completely sow distrust between the sisters, and then have her eventually either get Arya arrested or killed, and that's it. Then he could be the only one that whispers in her ear. That's it. I think that's all his play was.
Seems a little tame for me.
I think part of it is the show did a really bad job of showing how much Arya and Sansa did get along back in the day, because like they haven't talked to each other in so long, and the first thing they do is they this reunion scene, which made it seem like, oh, they're just sisters getting back together. But like, if you look at the evidence from the original, like the books and stuff, they really did not like each other at all. I mean, they're still their sisters, but like there was definitely like some tension I don't think wasn't translated at all in the show.
I get that, and I think that to me the problem is more to do with this season and how I just don't understand what they were doing with the Sansa and Arya scenes, and I think they just like, I don't know what it feels like they were just going for shock's sake. And I think that, to me, that I think comes down to the final problem, because I have absolutely no idea what Sansa and Arya's relationship at this point is. And,
yeah, that's true.
I mean, we talked last week about how there was, a missing scene between Arya, Bran, and Sansa that was shot, and they cut it out. And, like, to me, that is such a big problem, because if the argument is that Arya was actually distrustful of Sansa and was willing to go all the way, and Sansa was in turn willing to go all the way and arrest her, then their relationship makes a lot of sense. And it's like, okay, they have this reunion, it is pleasant, but quickly old problems resurface, and they get really close to the edge, and Bran is able to kind of bring them back, and now they're sort of begrudgingly coming together. That makes sense as their relationship. But because we don't have that scene, I have no idea what Arya and Sansa's whole thing was. Like, were they working together for the whole time? Were they...
Yeah, I agree with that.
And I just think that makes it so that Littlefinger kind of gets caught in that like, I just don't know what was going on, and whether Littlefinger was getting played, or whether Littlefinger's scheme was working and then just gets beaten by Bran's magical powers.
I think one of the big limitations also is that since it's a show and not the book, you can't, and they don't do flashbacks, you don't get in the head of Sansa or Arya, and like remember, like in the books you could say, oh, I remember when Sansa like stole my fucking dollar or some shit, I don't know, like that. You can't do that in the show. You can't have like, oh, I remember when Arya like threw mud at me or some crap like that. Bigger things than that. But you can't have that like internal monologue
there are
as
ways
well.
You can do it, but more.
Well,
go ahead, Cory.
Well, I was gonna say, in a TV sense, I think it was actually better this way, because it was like, you have to admit, whatever you felt towards it or not felt towards it, like it was like a circumstance where, like, when she said all these glyphs, all these crimes, and then mentions Littlefinger. Like, that's a good television moment. Like,
no, it's really not.
It's all about the moment.
I hate that, though. I hate the fact that it was all about that moment. That's not, for me, that's the most fake.
But you guys are talking about, like, you're right. We're not in a book setting where we could see the trust or distrust just laid out in front of us. We're in a TV setting where this stuff makes it more suspenseful. When Arya went to her and said, I could kill you right now and take your place. Like, it's suspenseful because as a viewer, you're not sure if she really means it or not, or if she's going to do it or not.
It's suspense without any depth.
But I don't think it is, because I think there was an element where it could have actually gone either way. There was an off-screen scene probably where they talked it out and they realized Littlefinger was the enemy, and it made for two very intense scenes where the viewer wasn't know where it was going to end up, what was up, what was down. And there were a lot of parts in the episode in between where Littlefinger died and when Arya threatened Sansa, where I didn't know, maybe she will kill her. Maybe there's
right there, that's my big here. This is where it is, where I have because the scenes were not shot with a single point of view. You have one scene that was shot from Sansa's, one that was kind of Littlefinger's, one that was kind of Arya's. You never get a clear picture as a viewer as to what's going on. And yes, Cory, you're right. it created this really like really great like television moment of, how do you answer these charges, Lord Baelish? And she looks to the side, and yeah, in the moment it's like, wow, that was great. But you start to think about it, and you start to realize that no, it's a moment with no depth to it. It doesn't make any sense. I mean, one, the actual scene makes no sense, like, because clearly the whole room is not surprised by why she's saying that it was Littlefinger, and if the whole room is not surprised, then they had to be in on it, and if they were in on it, how did Littlefinger not know?
I chose to look at that more so that nobody liked him to begin with. And they were like, yeah, Littlefinger's a jackass.
But
Am I the only one who had absolutely like no doubt that Arya wasn't gonna get killed, or like?
no, I had no doubt whatsoever. I knew 100%.
I think the problem is I watched the trailer where Sansa gives a line of like the pack survives thing. I'm like, oh, there's no way they're.
I didn't watch the trailer.
There's no way they're
even
gonna
then,
feud.
I had no doubt whatsoever. Because the scene was so obviously telegraphed to be one of those, oh, here are all of your crimes. That guy. Like, it was so telegraphed. But I hate this, and I feel like this is where Game of Thrones is, like this propensity for, yeah, let's throw out good storytelling to create a good moment. And to me, that's
It's the comparison to Batman vs Superman is so on point.
Yeah, it really
So on
is.
point.
It's a great little moment. It has no depth. It doesn't make me feel anything for the show the second time through. And that is so opposite and so antithetical to what Game of Thrones was back in the day. Because if you compare this to like other, big reveal scenes, even ones that I knew were going to happen because I read the books, were 1,000 times better and more impactful because they actually work with the whole viewership. And I think that to some degree this could have been solved if they had just stuck to a single point of view and shot all of this from one character's point of view, and then we would have at least gotten the picture of one character and been able to sort of, we could still have a big reveal, we could still have deception. Hell, you could have shot this from Littlefinger's point of view the entire time and kind of we were forced to piece together little bits of information. But because we sometimes get to see Sansa and Arya's private conversations, and then sometimes we don't get to see them, it creates a very disjointed picture. And it means, again, I don't understand what these characters' relationships are. I don't understand what they're doing, and that's not good enough.
Yeah, that's basically how I feel. I just feel like there wasn't any kind of suspense. I don't know. It didn't.
I felt suspense. I really did not know what was going to happen. So maybe it's just the viewer and it's subjective, but I definitely think we are in a place right now where we're just talking subjective facts. Not facts. There's no such thing as subjective facts, but like some viewers
all the time we're going to be. I mean, that's
no, of course, but I feel like there's some times where we could all agree on something and make it more of a fact that this is just bad writing, this is bad television, or this is good television. This is a circumstance where I thought at the way they played it worked. I swear to God, there were plenty of times where I felt that someone was going to die there, whether it be Sansa or Arya, or even, I don't even know about Littlefinger. And like when the whole thing happened where they turned on Lord Baelish, it was a good television moment for me, especially considering that I felt uneasy the entire time watching those one or two episodes. And again, like maybe to some people it just didn't make sense and it felt a little discombobulated, but I felt that where we got to was a good payoff.
Yeah, I think what it's just going to be is that the scene worked for some people and then it just completely didn't work for some people, for others. You know what I would have loved to see, though? Just thinking about it now. Arya in the middle, and it was on Arya, and then all the Knights of the Vale attack her, and she just, like, Itmans them. It's like 1 versus 100.
That could have happened, like, for all we know.
That's actually, thinking about it back then, I want to see that.
That would have been cool. Or,
War II.
I'll continue to say, God, I wish Sansa had been the one to kill him, but whatever.
Yeah, I agree.
So finally, just talking about Arya as a character and her kind of overall arc this season, because we start with this kind of her killing a whole bunch of Freys, and then meeting up with Ed Sheeran. I'm kind of confused as to what Arya's like, where she is mentally, and what her like whole thing is, because it felt like at the start of the season her arc was going to be about like the sort of nature of justice and whether or not she should be killing, just kind of killing all the Freys or Lannisters she possibly can, versus should she just be targeting the people who actually wronged her. And then in the end she makes this big choice to go home and kind of not give up her quest for revenge, but at least kind of put that on the back burner. And by the end I'm kind of, I don't know, I don't fully understand where she is now as a character and what her role is moving forward.
I think her entire character is based on identity. So like when she thought her entire family was dead, she became no one and was fully hell bent on killing everyone who wronged her family, right? But now that she realized, her family's here, and she remembers, I'm still a Stark. I still could like go back and be myself and have like pride in that. And I think that's like her entire like from book 1 till now story. Who is Arya Stark,
Mm-hmm.
Like, cause even like in the first episode, she's a tomboy and didn't want to be a princess. And she wanted to kill people. Well, she wanted to be a knight, really. And then now she's found her spot, like at her sister's side, being a badass assassin type person.
But I guess that's my question. Like, is her role now like Stark family assassin? Like, is that what she's just gonna kill people who Sansa needs her to kill? Like, I'm just trying to curious like what her role in the narrative is now.
That I don't know. All I know is she is now Arya Stark of Winterfell.
Yeah,
I think she's
that's
like
the big turning point.
I think she's like what Jaime is to the Lannisters, like the King's Guard or Queen for in this matter.
That's true. She could be Queen's Guard.
I guess she could be Sansa's Queen's Guard, even though Sansa's not a queen and Jon's not a king.
Yeah, but like
What is Sansa actually? If Jon is King of the North,
well,
Lady Winterfell.
Lady Winterfell.
So what I've heard, I was reading this thing. It would actually make sense if that the North and Winterfell are not the same thing. So even though Jon is king in the North, he's not actually the Lord of Winterfell.
But like, is Winterfell like the seat of power in the way that King's Landing is? Like, there's no Lord of King's Landing.
It's not. The thing is.
It's also its own thing.
The thing is, we don't really know because it's been so long since we've had a king in the North, and most of the kings have been Starks, so it just usually is 1-to-1. But you could make an argument that Jon Snow is king in the North, while Sansa is Lady of Winterfell and kind of the lord, like she's that lord, kind of in the similar vein that like Stannis or Renly was Lord of Storm's End, while Robert was king. And then if Jon is no longer king, then he's actually just nothing, and Sansa is Lady of Winterfell because Bran gave it up.
Okay, that sort of makes sense.
I mean, there's also an argument that Jon was named King of the North, therefore he is Lord of Winterfell, and was just named Warden of the North by Dany, and therefore is Lord of Winterfell. There's also an argument to be made that he's a Targaryen, so who cares? Like, it's complicated.
Yeah.
My guess
I'm just saying, if it's just King of the North and Sansa, what is Sansa?
I think
like, say it's Dany stuff didn't happen.
I think she is Lady of Winterfell.
Okay, all right.
At all times. And like all of her, the banners are pledged to her, who is pledged to Jon. Like how Randall Tarley has bannermen pledged to him, who's pledged to Olenna Tyrell, who's pledged to somebody else.
Okay, all right then, sure.
But again, this is all conjecture. I have no idea.
Nobody knows. George R. Martin doesn't even know.
Pretty much. So let's.
How does this feudal system work? I don't know.
Let's head down south to King's Landing and talk about our favorite twincests. So you've got Cersei, and you're coming off of this like big thing last season with her blowing up the Faith, and I'm kind of like Jon's resurrection. I kind of wish that mattered a little bit, because that just doesn't matter at all in this season.
Yeah, no one gives a shit. Unless they're all cowering in fear. I don't know.
This was like a kind of majorly popular religious movement, and
yeah, that's
Marjorie
true.
was supposed to be this like super popular, and like the common people loved her, and
It's not like she gave up. Like, oh, well, you bombed it. I guess we're going home now.
and there's just nothing. There's been no mention of this whatsoever.
I view King's Landing as like North Korea. They're just like so defeated at this point. They just don't care anymore. They're like, I just want to live. I literally just want to be alive. That's all I want.
I don't think that's possible. You know, in a world that doesn't have any of the things North Korea. I don't know. It's just one of those things where like it kind of gets back to what we were saying before. Like, yeah, blowing up the Sept of Baylor was this kind of major moment, but you know,
I forgot the equivalent of like in the real world. What would that be like? It
would be like if the Italians blew up the Vatican.
Yeah, right.
Like, that's what it would be.
That would be pretty major, wouldn't it?
Yeah, the people would freak out about that. It wouldn't just be like, oh, well, guess.
But like, if this happened in like the 1300s, so, and like it was royalty that did it.
So it'd be if the Roman emperor blew up the Vatican.
Yeah, but we don't know what would have happened. We don't know. Maybe it would have been a big deal. Maybe not.
If these people were willing to carve, you know, crosses on their head, and you know, march through the streets and pour out wine, like I feel like I'm not saying.
But were they all in the set when it blew up?
Well, yes, I understand that a bunch of the. I'm sure the majority of like the super religious people were, but like not everyone. The Sept isn't. There was 1 million people in King's Landing. There's not 1 million people in the Sept of Baylor.
Yeah. Well, I'm just saying, like everybody who is faith militant.
I'm sure that the majority of the faith militant has been destroyed, but it just like and I'm not even saying like you needed to do all that much, but maybe have like, you know, Cersei being things like some of the stuff that like Dany was going through back in Marine, like, you know, there's some underground resistance to her or something.
Don't have time for that.
I know. I wish. So we have Cersei and Jaime's relationship. Probably the most time they've spent on their relationship this season. Like, they were together for basically the whole season, and, you know, we got a lot of twincest. I asked this question to you. Cory, I have to ask this question. Is Cersei pregnant, yes or no?
Yes, and she will die before she gives birth.
I think she will die in childbirth. That's just my theory.
That's fair. But yes, I absolutely think she's pregnant, and that's going to play into
the follow-up question. Who is the father?
Jaime.
And it's not Euron?
No, it's Jaime. Wait, what do you mean? Euron? You think they had sex?
Why not?
That is a push.
I think she's withholding the sex from Euron until Euron does what she wants.
I would agree, but I don't know. There's just a lot of people who don't believe she's pregnant and or don't believe it's Jaime's.
I'm 100% she's pregnant. I'm 100% Dany's pregnant. It's going to play into both of them. Maybe there's going to be like two pregnant battling queens that are going to kill each other. I don't know.
That's not going to happen.
Fetus battle.
And wait, so even better. Not only is Cersei going to die to giving birth to a dwarf, it's going to be the whole zombie Tyrion baby thing, but it's actually going to be Cersei, not in Dany. Because, you know, we have to bring
it's going to be like season 2 of The Walking Dead, where she was afraid that the baby was going to be a zombie, so she didn't want to have the baby. I don't know if you've watched that show, but
no, I have not.
I just thought about it.
It's fine.
I haven't seen Walking Dead since season 3, so yeah.
All right, so next...
I don't believe she's pregnant, by the way. Just to throw that out there.
I know. So next thing about King's Landing, I have absolutely no idea why they included the Iron Bank. I think that was like very weird and silly, and like.
I just think it has to come into play. It has to come into play next season, or else there's no reason to have that dude there unless he's like sleeping with one of the producers.
I mean, it kind of feels like they were like, "Hey, it's Minecraft Holmes. Let's put him in the show."
It's true. Like, or he's got some real life blackmail, because there's no reason for him to be there besides.
I mean, he is the showrunner of a major British TV show, so it's possible that they're like, there's some like weird Sherlock crossover thing where he's like,
"We'll give you money if you put this guy in there."
Because he's like, that was such a meaningless plot, and I don't understand. Like, they could have done the exact same thing without him, and just she got all the gold from Highgarden, and she bought the gold company.
No, but like it's like, again, it's another one of those drama elements where you're sitting there as the viewer and you're like, can the Iron Bank turn on her? Like, are they going to go bankrupt? Can you fund X? Can you fund Y? Like, it's just an overarching thing that you as the viewer has to think about before everything got settled.
For an episode.
There's also the
One
fact
episode
that,
of this.
and since it's,
No, it was more than this an episode. It was before High Garden was taken.
Yes, which was taken in episode 3.
Okay, so we got those episodes, and then at the end of last season, the Iron Bank was a pretty big deal.
That's the thing. Even if it's a big deal, the fact that the show is so rushed in general, this isn't just for this season. This is like all the seasons. They keep playing the Iron Bank as some like crazy powerful thing, but nobody's actually seeing what they can do. So nobody knows what's going on. Like nobody.
But as a viewer, like you just hear Iron Bank and the fact that they have all the money. That's it. That's all you have to really know.
And let's say for argument's sake,
let's
say they were
it's
like
a visual medium. You gotta like show them like funding a faceless man to kill some leader in Marine or something. I don't know, something like that would have been good. I just feel like you don't realize that they're so crazy or so powerful.
Let's say for argument's sake, the Iron Bank was like, Cersei, you have defaulted. We are officially calling in the loans. We are funding your enemies. And they're like, hey, Dany, we're going to give you all the gold you could possibly need. And Dany's like, thanks. I have 3 dragons. I'm not sure what I need this gold for. Thanks.
Melt it and make a sword out of it.
It just seems like this, like they brought up this Iron Bank thing back in, I guess it was season 5 with Tywin, and saying like how he was borrowing, and it's kind of been a thing we've been talking about since the days of Robert. And I just think that they don't, like, I don't know what they were including it here for. It felt so weird and out of place. And on one of those things where it's like, unless next season there's going to be some kind of weird Golden Company plot that involves the Iron Bank, like, I just think that it's one of those things where, yeah, if this season was paced better and there weren't all these other problems, I'd say, all right, fine, whatever. We had a couple of scenes with this, Minecraft guy. But in this season that we actually got, cut those scenes out and add in the scene with Bran and Sansa and Arya, and then, okay, maybe you fix the little, you clean up the Winterfell stuff a little bit. And, like, it's a perfect example where it had no narrative impact.
The other thing it did do that I kind of just realized now is it also took away some of like the fucking like mythos of Littlefinger. Because remember, like back in the early seasons, they were saying how Littlefinger is the one who can make gold appear out of nowhere. But in reality, he was just borrowing the Iron Bank the entire time.
They did say that out loud when.
Yeah, they said it in this season, I think. I don't think they said it like. Did they see it say it?
No,
in,
they
like,
said it back
before?
In this. Remember the iconic scene of Pod's magical
dick? It was the Pod season, yeah. Yeah, that was the tripod scene. I forgot about that. I was watching clips. I thought it was this season.
No, that was a while. Way back, we found out that he's just been borrowing money from the Iron Bank. And even in like the very beginning of season 1, when he was like, when Robert wanted the tournament, Littlefinger's like, oh, I'll have to borrow it. And Ned's like, well, you can't do that. He's like, oh, you have to borrow more money. Like, I don't know.
I forgot. All this is merging together in my head.
Yeah, I don't know. It just felt like I understand, like Cory, what you're saying. Like, yeah, it was a nice little moment in the first scene. It's like, oh wow, maybe the Iron Bank's gonna like do something. It's gonna be a whole big thing. And then, well, she got the gold back, and then immediately, the guy who was like, you guys haven't paid any of your debts. It's been really like, we're about to call on our loans. And then she gives them the gold. And they're like, oh, actually, no, you're like the best borrowers I've ever had. Here's way more money. Go hire the I don't know. I just think that was such a weird.
Well, and just also to piggyback off what you said, like if they decide to join Dany and she's like, oh, I have dragons. No, if the Iron Bank decided to back Dany instead and they had resources, the Thraki dragons, and the Lannisters did not have any of this, it would have been a no contest, I think.
They didn't have any of what?
Money, dragons.
Wait, what did the Lannisters get from the Iron Bank that
because you can't
did anything against Dany this season?
You can't call the banners if you know that you have no resources or anything to back it up. You know what I mean? Like it takes away a lot of. You can't.
Yeah, you can. They're sworn to you. They did it.
But
the beginning of the season, they had no money, and they said, "Banners, come, we're going to war."
No, they still had the reputation, and they still had the Iron Bank spanking still.
But again, they captured Highgarden and got all this gold. So the gold problem stopped being a thing very quickly.
Yeah, but now the Iron Bank's not leaving them. It's not. It wasn't about the gold. I'm sorry if I'm miscommunicating.
You're saying that it would have affected. What would the Iron Bank backing Dany do? What would be the problem?
It would demoralize the entire Lannister side and Banners. Why would you
really
support...
think that the Banners who are already willing to fight dragons and deal with the fact that their leader's a crazy person would go, oh my god, Wells Fargo is mad at my boss?
The implied threat of the Iron Bank is, since they're in brothers, it's implied that they have connections with the Faceless Men. So the Faceless Men could, go take out fucking Cersei or something. I think that's the implied threat that they have. But
that would be great
said it.
If, we saw that. If
that's what I'm saying. They've never actually explicitly showed how strong the Iron Bank is, ever. So now they just seem like an annoying dude saying, "Hey, where's my money?"
Yeah, that's it. They needed to do more about that.
Like one scene where he's like, fucking, what's his name? Oh god, I can't remember his name now. Shit, I can't remember his name. But he goes, the Faceless Man guy goes and kills some random Jaqen goes and kills some random lord and says the Iron Bank wants his money back, and it kills him. That's all you needed. That would have been enough.
I agree. That'd be great.
True, but that never happened in the books either. To be fair,
I agree. It has no point in the book either right now.
No, I mean this is not just a show problem.
No. I'm sure. I'm just saying the Iron Bank is in the show because it's in the books, I think, and I think if there was no real significance or plot point about them in the books, you're not going to see it in the show either. And I'm not saying that hurts or hurt or helps. It's a fact.
Yeah, I think the Iron Bank will play a part in the next season. That's my final thing of it.
Yeah.
Also, why is it here?
It's funny. I want it to, and I hope you're right, but I actually don't think so. And I hope you're right.
So the final King's Landing thing. What the fuck happened with Qyburn? What is his role? Why is he here? Other than giving a fun little look to that hand, I just this is another character that I feel has was kind of interesting and had all this weird stuff going on, and now is he Cersei's butler? What is he? I know he's technically Hand of the King, but
Wait, what are you referring to?
I'm referring to the fact that in this season, he, other than designing a big crossbow that was, meaningless, what did he do? What was his point?
To be the hand of the queen.
Yeah, okay, I don't know what that means.
He made a big
What
crossbow.
does the hand do?
He showed that dragons can bleed, okay?
And then not really die and nothing bad will happen to them.
But I think the showing that Drogon could bleed is the foreshadowing for Viserion, but yeah.
Yeah, but I would have bought into Viserion getting, killed by magical ice spear without Drogon getting hit with a spear. I don't know. I guess maybe it's wrong to have expected something more of kind of crazy magic and
something undead.
Something
so into that shit.
Something interesting, but it was such Big Crossbow was such a letdown, and just Qyburn in general. I just don't. Other than the memes that have come out of him, I just don't know why.
He could be. Qyburn's just a creepy dude now. That's all he is.
He could be any other Maester, and it wouldn't matter.
But I think that's the thing. There's no reason for him to die. There's no reason for him to be there. So he's just gonna continue to maintain and be there. I think that's okay.
I mean, that's
fine. You don't have to kill the dude if he
No, it's not. I'm not saying he needs to die, and I don't even say I guess he's fine. This is not as big of a one as Littlefinger and Varys, who we'll talk about later. But I just
his main purpose was to bring back the mountain, and that's.
I just kind of wish that there was a little more to the crazy dark magic of Qyburn.
Yeah, there's potential. But no.
Next up, we'll do this one quickly, but another what is happening? Old Town. We all agree that was a mess.
No, actually, before we stop with the King's Landing stuff, I just want to say that I think the Cersei, Jaime stuff is actually the high point of this entire season.
I'm not going to say that because I think something else was, but I would agree that it was really, really good.
Yeah, because just Nikolai, whatever Jaime's actor name, Nikolai Custo, whatever his name is, he's really the way he played Jaime is perfect.
Yes,
and
I would agree.
He's just really.
I'd argue
their dynamic is perfect.
Jaime is MVP of the season. I think Jaime is the most well acted, and I think
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Second.
Just one to
throw it out there. The character I think is the best right now. Later, we've not talked about him yet. Yeah, but anyway, I would agree. I think the Jaime Cersei stuff was really, really good. But can we all agree, Old Town, complete mess? Like what? That was so useless.
I think it was just world building. Really nothing else for it.
I mean,
Just showing that there's like more Maesters.
you know,
I don't know.
I didn't even realize this, but I realized that Stannis told Sam that there were dragon glass on Dragonstone before he
Yeah, I
read
remember
that in the
that.
book. So none of the information that he figured out at Old Town mattered because he technically knew that already, and Bran can see everything. So the whole R plus L equals J reveal, I mean, didn't.
Hey, but he got the book though. He's got the written proof.
Sure, but that could have been done in many other ways than
Well,
all of
Sure.
this.
Mark, it's a miracle. I think this will be the one and only time. I 100% agree. I think it was everything sucked. Everything. Like the fact that they casually just said, "Oh, like the whole John birth thing was stupid." Unless they really play into this grayscale cure next season, it's useless. It was a waste of time. And if you want to talk to me about where the most time was wasted, it wasn't the sex scenes between Grey Worm and what's her name? Yep, thank you. And it wasn't the stuff going on at Winterfell. It was this. This is where I think the most time was wasted.
I mean, I agree. I think this was the worst because, like we talked earlier. The grayscale plot, all in all, amounted to unless something's going to happen next season, which I really doubt it. It amounted to nothing. I mean, it was just Jorah got grayscale. Jorah got forgiven by Dany. Jorah got cured of his grayscale. Jorah went back to Dany. Like none of that mattered. And
I would love it if like Grayscale somehow made you impervious to fucking undead shit. I don't know if that's possible, but I would love it.
that would be cool. I wouldn't have minded if he got like Victarian's like
The volcano arm.
Yeah, his volcano arm. That would have been really cool. If the cure was a little bit better than like, oh, he got a skin graft. I don't know. I think, and on top of that, Sam's character, I don't think they knew what to do with, because having Sam in the end, who is like A, wanted to be a maester his entire life, and B, has always been someone who has said, I understand the power of knowledge. I understand the power of history. That it's sometimes more important than a sword. To then turn around and be like, I'm tired of reading about the accomplishments of better men, and to parrot his father's lines and be like, I'm going north to help Jon. Like, no. Stay in Old Town and help Jon the way you can help Jon. You're not going to help by putting a sword in your hand. And unless, I guess maybe he'll just like be scouring records in the north in the Winterfell or something like that. But it felt so like it was such a waste of time.
I just don't get why they chose to go to the direction they did too. Like, why did they have to be assholes to him? Why couldn't maybe he could have started off with that? Maybe I would have I would have thought highly more of the shit montage if you actually see him working his way up in respect to the Maesters. And I think where they really dropped the ball on this is once Sam did what he did to cure the Great Scale, they should have and they had the opposite reaction I thought they would have. They were like, oh, you did it. Good. Go back to work. And I think they should have had a complete opposite reaction where they really respect him and he really became one of them after that. And they actually listened to him. And they didn't do that, which made it all more of a waste of time. So if you saw him rising through the ranks in respect and then ending up where he wanted to end up since the beginning, it would have been better. And it would have been less of a waste of time. But they didn't do that. So.
And to top it all off, I also am just like, I understand that this is a fantasy story, and you need to have the whole the heroes people are skeptical of the heroes and skeptical of the magical things that are happening, but there's so much magic in this world. I don't understand why people are like incapable of believing that White Walkers are real. Like, it just feels so weird. Like, there are dragons in Westeros right now. There is an undead zombie at Cersei's side.
Sitting next to you, yeah.
And yet still, it's like, oh, the White Walkers, oh, that's some, those are some wives' tales told to keep children from being afraid. And it's like, guys, I know that, I don't know. I just, the Maesters seemed like bureaucrats. Like, that's what they seemed like. There was no, intrigue them. It would have been one thing if there's, some kind of grand Maester plot, I know some people believe about, trying to end magic and stuff. But
yeah.
The fact that
I like that. That's one of my favorite theories, actually.
The fact that they just felt like a bunch of like old history professors who didn't want to listen to the new guy just felt so worthless.
And nothing changed. It just like bothered me how Sam was in the same place he started in where he ended up being. Nothing happened.
I agree. I guess that's kind of one of these plots I'm kind of saying about like how nothing happened. I mean, yes.
Well, no,
happened,
you're saying nothing as a whole thing.
But I'm saying this is one of the examples that kind of why I feel like that. When it's not actually, I know it's not true. I know things happened, but it feels like a lot of the narrative threads didn't really go anywhere. At least in this case, this one I think is really true. So the next thing that I really didn't like, that Cory is actually going to disagree with me, everything about the Greyjoys. Everything about the Greyjoys was a complete waste of time, and I hated it. I hated every minute of it. I'm so done with Theon. Euron was such a disappointment in the end. Why?
Nope. I'll let Chris start because I have a lot of talk about. But so Chris, you go ahead.
I don't know. I thought the Greyjoys were okay, a little bit unnecessary. You know, they kind of had the giant naval battle, which cool, but like
no effect on the world. But you know,
you had besides taking away allies, I guess. I don't know. I can't really pick out stuff that I find completely wrong with the Greyjoys. I just felt like they were kind of just there. If that makes any sense. They didn't really do too much. They had their one plot point, and then that was it.
But that right there, that's what I'm saying. Of like when in another one of those things where in a different season, that's fine. You can have characters that are just kind of around and doing small things on the fringes, and that's great because it makes the world feel expansive and it makes this world feel really big. But in a season where you're streamlining and where you're strapped for time and you're saying we're going to cut these plots down and we're going to go as hard as we can, to then have to deal with like, oh, we're still worried about Theon's redemption arc, and like, yeah, maybe Theon's going to be a major player next season and maybe it's going to be a big deal. But we keep saying that. We keep saying like, oh, we're keeping this character around because he's going to have a big impact, and like, he keeps.
Actually, how much was Theon actually in? He was in like 3 scenes, right? He was in the scene where the naval battle. He was in the scene where he comes back, the scene where he talks to Jon, and the scene where he like goes to save Yara, right? That was basically it.
And there's, I guess, the beginning of the scene with him and Euron during the meeting at King's Landing.
Oh yeah, I guess so. I mean, I feel like they were out of the story enough that he hit enough plot points that it didn't really matter, and it was okay. I don't know. The more I think about it, the more I'm like, it wasn't super entertaining, but I could see where they were trying to go with Theon, and they kind of just hit the points they needed to.
I mean, it's not just Theon for me. Like, it's also Euron, who
Yeah, okay.
I just don't get what they were doing.
Yeah. The whole Euron being the next Ramsay definitely I didn't feel that at all.
No, not in the slightest. And like, yeah, he had a really cool battle, and him coming down, off the planks and fighting was really, really cool, and I like that a lot. And Cory, I know you love that, but other than that, Euron, I feel like, was billed at the beginning of the season as like going to be this big thing, and he's going to control the seas, and it's going to be this whole plot, and then the naval battle happens, and that's the end of it. And legitimately, Euron does nothing else for the entirety of the season. He shows up in the final battle, in that scene in King's Landing, haunts Theon, leaves, and then Cersei says, "Oh, he's going to Essos to get the Golden Company," and like, "Oh, so Euron's a taxi service now?" Like, what? I mean, you could have had like interesting stuff with like him reaving on, trying to like do stuff with Dragonstone, or he trapped the Unsullied and that's going to be a big deal, although he didn't because the Unsullied just left and went to King's Landing. Like, I don't know. I don't really understand what the point of his character was.
There's also the whole thing where like he's supposed to be this worldly traveled person who knows more than everyone else, but I didn't really get that feel either.
No, not at all.
Or like he's like, oh yeah, I went to Valyria and came back.
And he had that line of like, I've traveled around the world and I've seen everything, but the White Walkers scare me.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, the line was technically a fake out because he wasn't actually betraying them, but it was still like such a weird and silly line. All right, Cory, please defend the Greyjoys for me.
All right, let's start with the obvious one, Theon. I like everything they're doing with Theon. I know you hated it when he was on the ship and he jumped off and went overboard. That's PTSD right there. Like I don't know how else. Everyone agrees too. Like everyone I'm reading, whether they like the show or not, agrees
I don't
that.
disagree. I agree. Yes, he has PTSD. I completely
All
agree
right.
with that.
So it makes sense. So we can take away the fact that. So now I think you were transitioning to like, all right, it makes sense, but it's still a waste of time, and why are we still focusing on this? I disagree. I think it's just in a Game of Thrones universe, it's such a good idea to show a character that has PTSD, especially because like it's something it's not even a topic that's covered in Game of Thrones often. It's like it's something that should happen so much more with other characters because of how fucked up the Game of Thrones universe is. And now you actually have a chance to fully explore what the ramifications of how callous this universe is on someone's psyche. And I think they're doing a good job with Theon. I think he really, by the end of it all, his talk with Jon really molded it together. And I think that's where his character finally came that full circle. Now we finally looped away Theon, and now Theon's where he should be, where he his superpower is like kick-ass superpower, where he just gets his ass kicked. That's a superpower. You just take a beating. And I think like the men now see his resolve and see that he is trying at the very least to be like a real brave Greyjoy. So I like all the Theon stuff, and I really do hope that he does get something good next season, whether he rescues his sister if she's alive or not, or just does something heroic, which I think there's a good chance there will be something. To go on over to Euron. There's no secret.
Can I respond to the Theon thing first?
Yes.
Yeah, I completely agree that he has PTSD, and I completely agree that that's like they're trying to show like the ramifications of this world on a person. The problem is you've set up a universe where that person dies. You've set up a universe where this is not a world where the weak are able to survive and continue going, and yet Theon is still alive, and that clashes. And I understand that on some level you want to be able to show this, and you don't need to just kill everybody off. But it just feels like that moment where Theon jumps off and Theon is terrified and he's forced to run away, where that's a moment where a character in this universe dies. Where
so
either
when was he going to die? That is my question to you. He jumps off.
And then
the only chance he really
and he just dies at sea. He doesn't get back onto a boat, and he dies. Because to me that would have actually been much more emotionally resonant, with a way for Theon's character to end, where he dies not as a fighter, not as a warrior, he dies as a coward, because he has been broken, and he is weak at heart, and that's what he is. And to play this sort of back and forth redemption game, it for me it undercuts the whole mythos of this universe, where the weak they don't prosper. You don't just Theon's a Greyjoy, so his men are gonna pull him up and save him, and it's gonna be okay. Like, I don't know. And again, it gets back.
I kind of do like the idea that he's just being strung along when he should be dead a little bit. Like, not everyone has to die when they show any sign of weakness.
It's not any sign of weakness, but like, I guess it gets back to the fact that I just don't know if we have time for this kind of story. And again, you're pushing plots so quickly.
I fundamentally disagree, and this is like one of those things where I guess we have to agree to disagree, that he had to die and that the weak in Game of Thrones has to die because I set a precedent for it. I like the storytelling they're doing, because this is another arc, just as I said with the Arya stuff, and how, as I've said with what was the other one where I said it? Where like maybe it was the Iron Bank, where like you just not knowing where it's going to happen, whether it goes one way or another, is the suspense of what you're watching, and that's what I was thoroughly enjoying about it. Like, Theon, sure, absolutely could have died, and I wouldn't be surprised if he ended up dying. But then where he is right now is just so heartwarming to me as a viewer, that like he's still a part of a proud family. He still was raised by the Starks and has primary connection to Ned Stark. And it makes you happy that Ned Stark, is still a part of him and his essence. And that's like the way I'd choose to look at it. But that's Theon, and we can go back and forth on Theon.
Move on to Euron.
Euron, I love. I do stand by what I said, where I think Jaime is the MVP of the season, but I 100% agree with you guys, where I think Euron is not a successor to Ramsay, but I think he is his own charm. I loved the scene of him commandeering the ship on the sea. That was his high point and the highest point he achieved this season. I understand why they went the direction they did with him, where he is really just a pawn in Cersei's overall game to, do what Cersei's scheme is. I respect that. I think that makes Cersei look like a stronger character, and I think it makes Euron look slimy. And I think that's a good thing for an antagonist to be. Is look like a slimy, opportunistic, just person that takes advantage of what they have. And I obviously Euron is trying to get within Cersei's graces, is willing to do whatever she wants to do so he can become king. So I think everything they did with Euron makes sense. And I think you can only play the card that he's the king of the seas for so long before you start writing yourself into some corners.
But it feels like they played the card, and then the card was just kind of sitting there, and then they pretended like it wasn't there anymore.
For where they want the show to go, and this is why I said that a lot of this is set up into next season, and a lot of this season's dependent on next season. What the big drama is, where all the dramas, the chips are being held right now, is the fact that Cersei is about to betray everyone in the North that's unified against the White Walkers. And that drama that entails of them expecting the Lannisters and the Banners to come in full force to back them up, them not showing up, Euron helping with this whole conspiracy on that side, where they are clearly now the antagonist. And right now you have the clear protagonist of Dany and Jon, and you're going to see a lot of drama early on next season, I think, of the Lannisters the whole Lannister army not showing up, and Jaime also now going AWOL is going to play a big part of this, I think. So all of this is just what they decide to go, and I think there's a lot of drama that's going to hold the rest every single episode next season, and that's why I respect this so much, because I think I like that direction, because it is going to be a big deal where the White Walkers have the full advantage going into the beginning of the season.
For the record, I don't. I think that the whole Cersei betraying them is actually completely meaningless, and I don't really understand why people seem to care. But we'll get to that in a little bit. But fine. But how does that matter? How does Euron matter then? What is Euron's point? What is his role here in this narrative?
Euron's point is to be another limb of Cersei. And he's a competent, he's a good fighter. He's someone that when Cersei asks him to do something, he's going to do it. He's like a mini boss, if that's how you want to look at it. I think.
Let me ask you a question. Let's say, for argument's sake, they just replaced the name Euron Greyjoy and made it somebody else. Don't the Red Wines have a fleet in the Reach?
No, I know what you're. I see your point, but isn't that the whole point of Game of Thrones? Is your family name? He's a Greyjoy. I think he also represents too.
Exactly, and that's the thing. Your family name matters. It plays into these things, and I don't think that Euron's does. I think Euron is just
I also disagree with you. Euron is the last pure Greyjoy. He represents all the Greyjoy values to an extreme, actually. And I'd argue that Theon
other than Theon and Yara.
Yara is a completely radical liberal. She doesn't allow there to be rape and pillaging and the whole pay the iron price. She wants to get rid of it.
No, she's not the radical liberal. She's Hillary Clinton. Somebody else is Bernie Sanders.
All right, sure. Well, you know my point. So she wants to completely get rid of this iron price, which is the Theon. This is the Greyjoy. Not Theon. This is what the Greyjoys are, and since the beginning of their house and their founding.
Wants to get rid of the iron price.
She does. Yes.
Really?
Dany said to her. Dany said.
I think she actually was going to do that. She wasn't going to do that, but Dany told her to.
Yes, and she was completely on board with it, and that was that.
I don't know if
Theon is not a Greyjoy anymore. He's a Stark, the way Jon said it, and I agree with that. Euron is the last pure Greyjoy. He is the one that holds on to the Greyjoy values. That's why he is important for who he is, and he can't be just some random Joe Schmo who happens to be a good Navy captain. I think he represents the last of a pure Greyjoy.
I hope you're right, and I hope that next season that plays into it, and there's something with these Greyjoys that matters. I'm really worried that it's not, and like Theon's gonna try and rescue Yara and die, and then that's gonna be the end of this, and we're gonna be like, wow, that was a waste. But maybe you're right. We'll see. Next up, we have Dany and Dragonstone and everything that happened with Dany. So we talked a lot throughout this whole thing about Dany sort of growth as a ruler and how they kind of wrote her, especially in the first couple of episodes with her and Jon and sort of the almost kind of petulance I feel like that she had at times, where it felt like she was like almost like, yeah, I'm queen because listen to me. Like there was it felt like at times there was a lot less of that, this is my vision for the future, and more of I'm a Targaryen, bow to me. But how do you think that overall Dany's arc was in season 7?
I liked it. I thought it was good. The whole like, I'm going to be the ruler, but I got to do it the right way type thing, and struggling with that while still winning, because she's up against someone who doesn't give a shit about how she's ruling. Kind of like how it almost felt a little bit like Stannis, so he's like, gotta save the realm first before you could rule it, kind of thing. I think it humanized her more than, I mean, she was already humanized throughout the whole season, like even more, like you can see her struggles. I think this season actually allowed Emilia Clarke to act for once, because it was like the long con of, well, not a long con, it was like the
long game.
She was acting before like someone who didn't want to be a cruel ruler, acting like a cruel ruler, and now she's acting like a kind ruler, trying to act like a cruel ruler, but not actually a cruel ruler, and she's just a normal person. If that made any sense whatsoever.
It really didn't, but I know what you were trying to say.
You know what I was trying to say, right?
Yeah.
Like she was acting in the show. She was
Daenerys was acting, not just Emilia Clarke.
Yes. Playing a dude, acting like a dude, like another dude.
Yeah. All right, Cory, how about you?
We lost him. He's gone.
I guess he's gone. All right, so I'll give my thoughts. I think Dany was actually handled pretty well. I think that I liked seeing her wrestle with the questions that come with becoming a ruler and with trying to decide how to conquer this land, and seeing that she has both the impulses to help people as well as the impulses to burn. I think that they kind of have. I think they've really done a good job of kind of capturing her identity as both a Targaryen and as like this breaker of chains and this person who's in a new position. I think that they did an okay job with Dany and Jon's relationship, although to be completely honest, I think that they kind of, and maybe this is just a Kit Harington thing, but it really felt to me like for the first 4 episodes, it was just Dany was clearly falling for Jon, and Jon was showing nothing. And then we started to see a bit more of Jon, and then I guess they're on the love boat.
The man was all business. He was trying to save his people.
Now I don't know if that's just it's Kit Harington, and they've told him for 7 seasons that you need to be brooding all the time, or the girls aren't gonna love you, and that's very possible. So I do feel like reading some of the commentaries and reading stuff, they said that there was stuff about Jon, Jon was supposed to be falling for her too, but it did feel pretty one-sided until until the first boat scene.
First boat? Second boat, yeah.
The first boat scene, the shirtless boat scene, but the pants were still on.
Wait, what?
You didn't hear anything that I said, did you?
No.
Okay. I'm saying that I feel like I like Jon and the way they did Jon and Dany's relationship growth, but it really felt like it was very one-sided until the first boat scene between when it was the first time I felt like Jon really was actually falling for her. But I'm not sure if that's just a Kit Harington was brooding all the time, or if that was actually the way it was, that really risky Jon was not really interested, not overtly falling for her until the end.
I wonder like what would happen if they both weren't attractive? Like Danny looked
This show would not have gone on as long.
Well, that
I'm saying like Danny looked like a Frey daughter, and like I feel like a lot of this has to be based on the fact that they're both attracted to each other physically.
I think that we're also in a world where the fact that you're a queen essentially makes you the most beautiful woman in the world.
Okay, sure.
I think that
Power, man.
because we've heard this over and over of like, oh, Cersei's the most beautiful woman in the world, and it's like, I mean, sure, but based on and like Marjorie became the princess, it's like, oh, well, she's the most, is she the fairest of them all? Like, I really feel like your position kind of determines your level of attractiveness.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't see the chemistry until the very, very, very end, and I think it was. You're right. Like, I just remember the first time they mentioned it, and it made me actually think about it. I'm like, wait, what? They were flirting with each other? Like, I didn't see any of that. What are you talking about?
I thought Danny was clearly flirting with him.
Okay.
But I didn't think Jon was. I really, the first time I thought Jon was actually flirting with her was when he bent the knee.
Well,
How would you react to her move? Here's my 3 dragons. It's a pretty good move. I like it.
I mean, well, the thing is, Jon has a counter move of like, actually, one of these is my dragons now.
They're not his dragons.
If he bonds with Rhaegal.
Yeah, look at my giant wolf. Oh, wait.
yeah, what do you mean bond? He touched them once.
Yeah, but he touched Drogon. He didn't touch Rhaegal.
Oh, yeah.
It would have been cool if Rhaegal came down. That's extra CG budget.
Yeah, well, whatever. All right, so for the big characters with Danny, we have Tyrion. So overall, Tyrion this season, I was a little bit disappointed. I think that like what he does makes sense, and I'm not really negative when it comes to him, but I do kind of wish Tyrion was a little bit more than just bad battle plans and telling Danny not to burn things.
Yeah, it was a little underwhelming.
But he also came up with plan to go north, which I have to hold against him because that was the stupidest thing that's ever happened in the world of television.
No.
He was the Suicide Squad.
Yeah, and that's not a compliment.
And they didn't have a Margot Robbie, so I mean, it's the best part of it's gone.
But come on, the Hound is as cute as Margot Robbie.
That's true. The Hound is.
And Tormund was there.
They had a run at least.
I think Tyrion also really, really succeeded when he was in King's Landing and he was interacting with his siblings. That's when he really was at his strongest.
And I guess that's what's keeping me from being really negative is I really enjoyed his stuff with Jaime and his stuff with Bronn and his stuff with Cersei, and I kind of like that's what's fresh in my mind. I'm
kind of the strong part of game in general.
Yeah, 100%.
Like their conversations between just people who know each other.
Mm-hmm. All right, so our final what happened to a character? Varys, which I think is the worst. Why is Varys in this show?
He's run out of his usefulness.
Like, I'm not saying he needs to die. I'm just like, I don't really feel like he needs to even be there. Like, just have him not.
But here's the thing about like, why are people there? It's just like they have no place to put them now. They just have them on the back burner, which I think is okay. Not everyone has to have like their own specific, impact on every single scene.
I mean, I understand that, but my point is,
but there are points where
how did Varys lose anything that like what?
Yeah, but I do agree there are points where like he should be doing something here because that's in his character and he's not.
Like he's supposed to be the spy master. He's supposed to have all this information, and Jaime takes an army and marches it south, and no, like, hey guys, I know something. Like, I don't know.
Well, he lost his little birds. Kyrie got him now.
But he lost his little birds at King's Landing. He had little birds all over the world.
I guess that's true.
I mean, he had birds in Marine while he was an advisor in King's Landing.
Good point.
Like, I understand what you're saying, and yeah, I think Varys kind of lost his usefulness, and at that point, giving Dany, like, also map hacking based on Varys would have been a little ridiculous. But this is, I guess, a time where it's like I feel like you just didn't need to have Varys. Like just Varys is with Illyrio Mopatis, and then that's it. Like you just don't have him be there, and then I don't care. Then I don't have to worry about like, oh, what happened to Varys? Why isn't Varys doing things? But the fact that he's in these scenes and you gave him that one like weird, I pledge my life, my service to you, Danny, and I'm not going to betray you, and oh, you were the spy master, and I'm like, Danny's like asking this guy who has no value to her to like pledge him his life. That's what I'm not. That's what I'm.
He had two scenes. He had that one and the one with Melisandre, and that was it.
Yeah, and he had one line in the finale.
What did he say in the finale?
In the finale, his entirety of his participation is he says the words, and how much would that be? Then that would be double what, sir, when Tyrion tries to bribe Bronn. Yeah. That is the entirety of his participation in the finale. And like, okay, great. That's like to me, that's just a waste. And I mean, it's not a big deal because it's one line, and the Melisandre scene was, and the scene with him pledging was fine. Like, it's not even a waste of time. It's just a like, this was a character that was like, has been essentially in the show it seems like plotting for the arrival of Danny for the last, 16 years. And now it's happened, and now he's like, oh, and he had this one scene with Tyrion where he was talking about burning people.
I think, again, I feel I sound like a broken record, but I think next season it's going to be Varys as like their magic maester / scientist, like concoction guy, versus the one that Cersei has with I'm sorry, what's
that would be really bad because Varys, hates magic and is completely against it, right?
But he uses it.
When?
What? First off, he uses the teleport everywhere.
Oh, yes, that's true. He does have magical teleporting powers.
Second off, he has that, like, remember, like, that weird scene with, like, the magic box of, like, the guy he's keeping alive because he's getting revenge on him? Isn't that all magic-based?
I don't remember this at all.
I don't think so.
Yes, this was around, like, season 2 or season 3.
Wait, say that again?
And Varys is going into his backstory, and the guy who ended up, cutting his dick off, he has him in like a box and like keeps him alive in a box. Like
I think that's the fact that like he hates this dude and he's not using any magic on him. He's just actually as a dude in the box.
Yeah.
And he's torturing him because he fucked him up when he was a kid.
Well, he's keeping him alive somehow.
You can throw some scraps in there.
Give food to a guy. I mean,
no, I'm telling you, Varys does magic.
I'm fairly certain he doesn't, but okay.
Varys is actively anti-magic. Like
I thought he's anti-magic.
Like he says it because like the reason he was castrated was for some like weird magical ritual.
I think if there's anyone if you want a wizard battle, it's gonna be Melisandre. Because she said she's gonna come back. She's gonna die in Westeros.
It could be Beric, I guess.
Well, Beric's gonna fight the Night's King.
That's true.
For sure.
But like, I don't know. I don't think that's. I mean, this is a case where I think you're not just wrong, Cory. I think you're like completely wrong, like in a way that's like.
Because I think there's actually like evidence in the book.
Yeah, I think textual. Like this is not an opinion. I think that you're just factually wrong.
We will see next season.
Sure, we'll see.
Sure. So now you say Jaime, your MVP. I'm going to go with my MVP, who I think was the best character in this season, and that was the Hound. I love the Hound. The Hound had, for me, the best scene, which was the Hound in the farmer with the farmer and the daughter in the burial. I think that scene was the most emotionally resonant and like everything I love about what this show can be, and just across the board, like I really like the Hound. I think he was really great, and so yeah, my MVP for the season is the Hound.
I like the Hound. I wouldn't say he was as impactful as Jaime, but he was.
Definitely wasn't as impactful. But I mean, in terms of like, he had the best scene, and that like
he was doing Hound things, making quips at people, and
I really liked the scene with Brienne.
Being angry.
I think that was a really good character.
Who?
There. With Brienne, his conversation with Brienne in the finale.
Oh.
I talked about that all last week though, so I don't want to get into it again. All right. So the final discussion I want to have is, in the end, the wall comes down. And the way the wall comes down is via ice dragon breath. So the question I have is the are the White Walkers returning? Is this like preordained where like they started coming back because Danny's alive? Like what? And like they've been like for the entirety of the show, they like the Night King has been waiting for this exact moment to get a dragon and bring the wall down, or do you think that that's because for me it's just a little I find it kind of weird that's like the only way they could get past the wall is to get a dragon, which didn't exist. Like they weren't alive yet when the Night King started, and like when the White Walkers started coming back, because there is stuff like in season 1 with White Walkers or whites technically, and like I'm trying to figure out exactly like, and the reason I ask, or the reason I think this is really is important is because if the Night King like has this like incredible future seeing ability, that really changes things versus if this is just opportunistic. Oh, there's a dragon here, let's kill it.
I think they were always planning on marching to the wall, and I think them getting the dragon was just a quality of life change that helped them out. I don't think it was preordained or destined that they got the dragon. Or even if it was like the part of the Night King's master plan, I think he saw the opportunity and seized it, and now he just had a much easier time getting across the wall.
Like, what was the plan?
If he doesn't get a dragon, how is he getting through the wall? Because there is magic that
Siege,
like, keeps them.
you do a normal siege of the wall. You have the numbers.
Yeah, but
like
if
a
there's
siege of the
magic
wall
that prevents you from crossing it, siege can last forever, and it's not like there isn't food on the other side.
Yeah, like it's not. Yeah, it's not like you're sieging a castle where you trap them inside. They have like the entirety of the.
And it's not like the.
Well, when you say magic, like if they got a door open, they can't enter it. Is that what it is?
There's magic that prevents them.
Because like that was the whole like why Cold Hands, Benjen, whatever can't go through. Like literally couldn't walk through the door.
Yeah. Until Bran did and fucked it all up, but you know.
Well,
maybe they like use the giants to like throw them over the wall.
Giant run at it hard.
I guess I don't know. I just it feels.
I mean,
the whole dragon bringing down the wall. I'm not saying it was a letdown, but like I don't know. It was just it felt a little weird to me as like the only way the whites could survive, like or the White Walkers could have their plan work was contingent upon Danny in Essos walking into a funeral pyre, getting dragons born, and then bringing them to Westeros, and then bringing them north. Like that's a lot of luck on their part to have this happen.
Which is why I actually think since he's a what you call it a green seer that it was all kind of at least partly seen and preordained, or else it'd be too much.
Yeah, and like I said, I think it's important because if the Night King like can have this ability to see at least some stuff about the future, that does kind of impact how they're going to stop him.
Yeah, the fact that he could touch Bran inside his visions makes me believe 100% he's a green seer.
Oh, no, I'm sure he's a green seer, but do we know green seers can see the future?
That's a good point.
Because I
think so. Maybe not.
Because Bran technically said the whole like I can see the past and I can see the present. Like he didn't technically say he can see the future. We've never seen Bran have a vision of the future.
Yeah, I don't know. But being able to see anything everywhere is a pretty good skill to have anyway.
Yes, it is.
Regardless of if they knew the dragon was coming.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. So, do you guys have anything else about the season in particular that you'd like to discuss before we get into our ratings and everything?
There were some good scenes.
There were.
Field of Fire was cool.
There were some great
Wall
moments.
coming down looked visually cool. Boat sex, you know.
Yeah, lots of fun. I mean, there was a lot of boat sex. Was the
I kept
majority
imagining
of the sex this season on a boat?
There was sex in Dragonstone. Well,
oh yeah.
Technically,
no, there were
not
two.
technically.
There were two land-based sex scenes and two boat-based sex scenes.
There was no penetration. No.
Well, you're right, but there was no penetration in two of them then.
Which was the other one? I can't remember the other
The
one.
Yara Sand Snake fun.
Oh, and the boat.
Foreign invasion.
Foreign invasion, yeah.
which
I cringed a little bit.
that was a terrible line. Not the worst line of the season. For me, I'm still content. The worst line of the season and the worst line of the show, other than Bad Pussy, was the witch who murdered my husband. That line was so stupid.
I don't know. I think Bad Pussy beats out for me. I'm not gonna
I think you're right, but that line was bad. Like,
It was pretty bad.
Come on, writers. All right. So I would say if you've watched the Thoughts from Mount Wu episode like this, although that episode never came out, so I'm just going to explain how this whole thing worked anyway. So normally at the end of an episode, we give our ratings out of 10 and then give a little final thoughts and we wrap things up. However, for our final season, we're going to do the same thing, but we're going to get a rating. Everyone's going to give a rating out of 10 based on the whole season as a whole. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell people what their overall average rating for each episode is. Taking each episode rating that they've given, averaging them, and then seeing which one is higher or lower. And essentially what that is saying is if your overall rating of the season is higher than your average, it's saying, okay, yeah, each episode was what it was, but the overall season was better than that. The overall season was better than the sum of its parts. If your overall rating is less than your average rating for each episode, then you're saying, well, the episodes were very good, but the cohesive whole of the season didn't really work as well and was lower. And if they're about the same, then what you're saying is, well, I think that the average of each episode was about what the season was. And I think this is a useful way to kind of look at the season and sort of see, okay, how did each episode flow together versus how did each episode work individually. So, Cory, why don't you start? What is your overall rating for this season, season 7?
I thought this was a very strong season, and I liked all of the little things. I do agree that this is a lot of setup, and I thought the setup is very good. And I did have a few of my complaints about it with the season. Obviously, the stuff with the Macers really didn't bode well with me, and then a few other small things, but nothing that derailed the season as a whole. And I still stand by what I said, where I think it's one of the stronger seasons out of all of Game of Thrones. I'm not going to say it's the strongest, but I think it's one of the stronger ones, probably in my top 3. So overall, I'm probably going to round this all up with an 8.8 out of 10.
Well, look at that. Your average was an 8.73. So you are basically exactly the same. You believe this season was what it was in terms of its averages. Just as a heads up, Cory, though, saying you're in the top 3 of 7 seasons is not actually that big a deal. Like,
it's the top percentile. It's over the...
No, it's not the top percentile by any... No, that's not how math
If there's 7 seasons and you're... Yes.
7 is, what, 60 percentile?
Yeah.
Ish?
Yeah.
Quick math.
No. That's not the right word that you're trying to use, Cory. All right, so I mean, if you're saying that the overall is about the same as the average, then I don't think you have anything more to say as to why, because that's pretty obvious. Chris, how about you? What is your overall rating for this season?
I'll go 7.5. Sure, yeah, why not?
That's interesting. So you're about the same. Your average episode was a 7.3, 7.4. So yeah, you're about the same as well. So you're saying this is about as good as each episode.
I thought it was lower. Because I had those. I guess
If you want to go, your overall ratings, you gave episode 1 a 6.5, episode 2 a 7.5. You didn't rate episode 3 because you weren't here. Episode 4, you gave a 9. You gave a 9.
Which was 4? Was 4 Field of Fire?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because you said it was about the same as Hard. Gone close to on par with Hard.
Yeah.
Episode 5 a 7.5, episode 6 a 6, and episode 7 a 7.7.
Okay. Alright. Yeah, it makes sense. It just overall felt, I don't know, it just felt like not exceptional but not bad. I don't know.
I mean, a 7.5 is you're saying it's very good. Even a little higher than that.
Like, it's still, to me, it's still better than
most of television.
Everything on cable TV. Maybe not everything on Netflix, but everything on cable TV.
Okay.
Or whatever the exclusive streaming shit people are doing now.
Yeah.
It's still like the budget of a Hollywood movie, so everything's gonna look cool as hell. Storylines are gonna be but most TV storylines are pretty anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Unless I just don't watch enough TV, it's possible.
All right. So for me, I'm going to give my overall rating a 5.8. I'm very negative. and I mean, if you've been listening, you can kind of hear that. There was moments that I liked in the season. There were some things that I enjoyed, but for the most part, I thought this was very weak. I think that this is the weakest season of Game of Thrones. I'd have to rewatch season 5 because I know there are problems with season 5, but season 5 is hard home, which I feel like might just.
I don't remember. What was season 5? What even happened?
I mean, it had Dorne, which was obviously bad.
Oh yeah.
But I don't know. It had Hard Home, which is like such a great episode that I feel like that's all I remember right now. So I'd have to go back and like rewatch season 5.
Yeah, I would at least like look at the summaries of all the episodes
to try and decide whether or not I think it's actually
remember.
worse, which one is worse. But right now, I would say I think this is definitely the low point for Game of Thrones. This is definitely worse than seasons 1 through 4. I think this is worse than season 6, and I think by a pretty reasonable margin. Now, my average rating for each episode is basically a 7.0. So I actually think that there's a pretty major gap between the episode ratings versus the overall, because I think that there are 2 very good episodes. I think episodes 2 and 4 are both, really strong. Fields of Fire was a very fun battle. I think the finale is a pretty good episode as well, individually, and I give it 7.5. But overall, I think that the overarching story and the overarching storylines were pretty weak, and I think when they come together, they get weaker. And I really do stand by the fact that I think that overall rating is significantly lower than the average. Just for reference, just because it's fun to do, let's make sure we do this properly. Math is hard, right? Okay, so the overall average, if you average everyone's rating, that includes all the guests we've given, the overall rating for this season, based on episode to episode, is a 7.49, so a 7.5.
I was on point.
Yep. If you take our overall ratings without the averages and just gave what we just said, that's a 7.37. So we are, as a podcast, kind of saying this was a very good season. Not quite, perfection, but still very good. The highest rated episode was episode 4 with an average rating of a 9.1, 9.2. The lowest rated episode was episode 5 with an average rating of, episode 6 with an average rating of 6.6. Although Cory did give that episode a 9.2.
Yeah, that sounds like
Cory, your ratings across the board were 8.9 episode 1, 8.2 episode 2, 8 episode 3, 9.8 episode 4, 8 episode 5, 9.2 episode 6, and 9 episode 7.
Yeah, you know me.
Very positive. For reference, mine, 7.5, 8.8, 6.5, 8.7, 5.8, 4.5, 7.5.
What was the second episode? I can't remember now.
Episode 2 was Arya going back to Winterfell, Jon deciding to leave, and the Greyjoy battle.
Oh, Greyjoy battle, okay, yeah.
Alright. So, with that, we're going to wrap things up. Quickly, I'll do my plugs. Check out Thoughts from Woo, our Avatar podcast. We'll be back with the drill soon, and then moving into the end of book 2. We have some really exciting episodes coming up on that, which I think will be really cool. So if you like Avatar: The Last Airbender or The Legend of Korra, check that out. Also, don't be alarmed if you're a fan of Crossroads Inn. We will be doing more Game of Thrones content or A Song of Ice and Fire content. We will be taking a break for a little while, but I do have a few ideas I want to kick around for some specials, which I think will be interesting, and things to talk about in between the long night. And we might go back and start talking about some older episodes, but we'll decide that once we've had some time to settle in.
We'll do it chapter by chapter for The Winds of Winter in 2020.
In 2025, sure.
2025, sorry. Yeah,
finally, as I was teasing some Hearthstone content before, so yeah, Cory and I had a really cool idea. So if you like Hearthstone and maybe like a certain really fun anime, you might like some of the stuff we're going to be doing with that soon. And finally, I announced before, but just one more plug for our Arrow content. We'll be doing a weekly Arrow chat, Cory and I, and potentially somebody else, and it'll be text-based, so this one you can actually read. You can read my terrible spelling, which we talked about on this show a little bit, where we kind of break down all of the Arrowverse shows and hopefully get some fun stuff with that. So
I actually have my own plug quickly.
okay, go ahead, Cory.
If Mark and I agreed on this, I
Star
think,
Wars thing.
yep, November or December is going to be Star Wars month, where we rate down all of the movies, including Rogue One and obviously
Ooh.
Force Awakens,
Ooh, that sounds heated.
on the very same scale we've been using for all the other stuff. And we are going to do that obviously in preparation for the next movie, the eighth movie, which I am very excited for and I hope succeeds. So keep an eye out for that.
Yes, that will be fun. All right, Chris, anything you want to plug?
Nothing else besides follow me on Twitter. I put my my modem into my freezer today. It made my internet better, so maybe I'll try to stream later. I don't know. I still suck at StarCraft. Suck at StarCraft, but we'll get there at some point. I'm actually thinking after BlizzCon, I kind of want to do that show of just get people to talk about the patch, but that's a whole different thing.
Yeah, we'll figure that out.
I gotta do some more. I need more content. It's not like I do 8,000 things at once.
Yep.
Soon, I swear.
Oh, and keep an eye on this channel. I might be streaming a little bit soon. I finally have a stable.
We should stream PUBG.
Yeah, that's true. Check out some potential.
We got
PUBG streams.
highlights going because there are some stupid things that happen in that game.
Follow us on Twitter. The Twitter's kind of hard to read, but it's the last letters.
I could read it.
The top Twitter, I mean.
Oh, it's not at Woo Poo.
It's POD. But follow me on Twitter. Everything I post, I kind of retweet on that account as well.
You'll find it. Yeah.
Follow all of us. And thank you guys for tuning in. We will.
How did we get 8 viewers in the last 10 seconds? What just happened?
Because Charles' sister hosted us.
Oh, okay. Well, that's just bad timing then.
So sorry that we're wrapping up, but thank you guys for tuning in. Follow us on Twitch and Twitter and everything, and we will see you guys soon.
See ya.